General Hospital spoilers reveal that with Sasha's emotional decision to leave Port Charles alongside baby Daisy, a seismic shift has unfolded in Michael's life. One that has not only dismantled the fragile domestic vision he was beginning to build but has also forced him into a space of profound emotional redefinition. For a time, it seemed as though Michael had finally found stability, reuniting with Sasha, embracing the responsibility of fatherhood for both Wiley and Amelia, and attempting to stitch together the broken pieces of his past in order to construct a future rooted in love, healing, and unity. But now, with Sasha's absence echoing like a void in his heart and home, Michael finds himself once again in search of meaning, connection, and perhaps most urgently, someone who sees him beyond his pain. And in the most unexpected turn of all, that someone may be Britt. Britt's sudden reappearance in Port Charles, shrouded in secrecy, touched by danger, and weighed down by the unseen consequences of her time away, initially raised more questions than answers. But as Michael found himself drawn into her orbit, particularly through shared ties to Wiley, Jason, and Liesl, an emotional tether began to form between them. It was not born of flirtation or romantic expectation, but rather from something deeper and more volatile, mutual loneliness. Both Britt and Michael have lost far more than they've gained in recent years. Both carry wounds not visible to the outside world. And both are guarded, reluctant to let anyone too close. Yet through the cracks in their respective emotional armor, a raw, electric vulnerability is beginning to emerge, a connection built not on fantasy but on the shared ache of survival. Their early interactions are marked by tension and hesitation. Michael is still carrying the sting of betrayal and loss from both Willow and Sasha, while Britt remains entangled in a web of secrets likely tied to Brennan and the WSB. But despite, or perhaps because of, these complexities, their conversations begin to deepen. Michael finds in Britt a rare form of honesty, someone who doesn't try to fix him, but who listens without judgment. And Britt, in turn, sees in Michael a man far more nuanced than his public image suggests, a man capable of fierce loyalty, but also of deep emotional repression. She recognizes that repression because it mirrors her own. The tension between them is not overtly romantic, at least not yet. It's more like a current, pulsing just beneath the surface, fueled by their shared pain, quiet glances, and the silent comfort of simply being understood. It begins when Michael stumbles upon Britt at the hospital after a tense encounter with Willow, both of them needing a moment to breathe. Words are exchanged, sharp at first, then softer. Britt comments on how exhausted he looks, and Michael unexpectedly opens up about Sasha leaving. Britt, caught off guard by his vulnerability, doesn't offer platitudes. Instead, she says she understands, and he believes her. From there, the connection builds gradually. Their paths cross more frequently. Britt checks in on Wiley with unexpected gentleness, and Michael notices. Michael offers to drive Britt home after a late shift, and she accepts. Each interaction pulls them deeper into a space of emotional familiarity neither expected. Port Charles begins to buzz with speculation, particularly from Liesl, who watches the evolving dynamic with curiosity and cautious hope. Even Jason, once emotionally linked to Britt, can sense something shifting, though he remains silent. For now. What makes this pairing so potent isn't just the novelty of the match, it's the narrative symmetry. Michael and Britt both have been molded by loss, betrayal, and the pressure of impossible expectations. Both have tried to outrun their pain by saving others, Michael through fatherhood, Britt through medicine. But now, they're learning that healing might come not through escape, but through the unexpected solace of someone who knows how to sit with the darkness. If the writers continue to explore this slow burn relationship, it could blossom into one of the most layered romantic arcs GH has seen in recent years. Not just because it's unpredictable, but because it offers Michael a path toward emotional maturity and offers Britt the chance to reclaim a sense of self not defined by her past crimes or traumas. Together, they could find a new definition of family, not built on old wounds or expectations, but on mutual understanding and emotional transparency. Of course, such a shift would not come without chaos. Willow, already struggling to justify her choices with Drew, may come to regret the distance she put between herself and Michael, especially if she sees him finally finding joy with someone else. Sasha's eventual return, if it happens, could throw another emotional wrench into the mix. And if Britt's connection to Brennan or the mysterious lab experiments comes to light, Michael may be forced to choose between his heart and his principles. But for now, in the quiet moments where Britt and Michael's eyes linger a second too long, in the shared silences that feel heavier than words, in the subtle care they show for one another without realizing it, they are rewriting their stories. Not through grand declarations, but through healing glances and cautious trust. And as Port Charles continues to spin with secrets, betrayals, and shifting loyalties, perhaps one of the most unexpected love stories is quietly beginning to unfold right beneath everyone's noses. This isn't just a rebound or a narrative detour. It's the emergence of something profound, a possible partnership forged in pain, but held together by possibility. If given the space to grow, Britt and Michael could become a new emotional center for General Hospital, disrupting old alliances, mending fractured hearts, and offering something that Port Charles hasn't seen in a long time, a love story that begins in the ruins, but rises with quiet, resilient hope. Jason finds himself standing at the center of an emotional firestorm that has crept into his life with a quiet, devastating intensity. After years of suppressing personal longing in favor of loyalty, protection, and unshakable control, he is now unraveling in a way few in Port Charles have ever witnessed. His desire for Britt, once buried beneath layers of obligation, particularly to Carly and the Corinthos Empire, is no longer a quiet ache. It has become a volatile force. One that's distorting his judgment and exposing his vulnerability. For a man who wants to find himself by silence and stoicism, the chaos now boiling beneath the surface is both foreign and dangerous. The most jarring part isn't just his emotional reawakening, it's that Britt, the woman he once walked away from for all the right reasons, may no longer be waiting in the shadows. She is being pulled closer to Michael, and that shift is igniting a storm inside Jason that he can't control. The truth is that this triangle forming between Jason, Britt, and Michael is not rooted in traditional betrayal but in a deeper, more painful reality, timing, regret, and emotional fragmentation. Jason made the ultimate sacrifice when he married Carly during Sonny's absence, believing it was the only way to protect the family. In doing so, he shattered the budding connection he had with Britt. It was a choice made out of necessity, not selfishness, but it left wounds nonetheless. Wounds Britt had to heal on her own, away from the man she trusted. Now, she has returned. Still marked by that abandonment but also changed. She is no longer the woman waiting for Jason's affection, she is a survivor, scarred yet open in ways Jason cannot fully read anymore. And it is Michael, of all people, who has started to fill the emotional space Jason once held. Michael, still recovering from the heartbreak of Sasha's departure with Daisy, has been reaching out in unexpected directions. His emotional vulnerability, his attempts to find new footing in a world where his family, his children, and his future feel uncertain, have led him into Britt's path. Their connection started simply, shared concerns over Wiley, occasional hospital run-ins, conversations about grief, guilt, and the weight of responsibility, but it has deepened. What Jason sees now is not flirtation or infatuation, but something more dangerous, emotional safety. Britt is beginning to feel safe around Michael in a way she once only felt around Jason. She laughs with him. She confides in him. She allows herself to be seen, not as the daughter of a villain or the ex of a mob enforcer, but as a woman who deserves comfort and honesty. And that is what is slowly driving Jason into a silent state of panic. He watches from the edges as their closeness builds, unsure how to re-enter her world without undoing the damage he caused. Carly senses the change in him, his sudden absence, his erratic silences, the way his eyes linger when Britt enters the room or the way his shoulders tense whenever Michael mentions her name. It's not jealousy, at least not in the way most would recognize it. It's grief. Jason is mourning the future he might have had if he had chosen Britt sooner. If he had broken away from the legacy he was groomed to protect. The situation grows more volatile as Britt begins to confide in Michael about her suspicions regarding Brennan, her past, and the dangers that still loom over her return. Jason, who once would have been her confidant and protector, is now forced to watch from the outside. His protectiveness is reigniting. But it's now being fueled by emotion rather than strategy. He begins inserting himself into situations under the guise of safety, but in truth, it's about presence, about reminding Britt, and perhaps himself, that he still exists in her orbit. But his presence brings confusion, not clarity. Britt is torn between the man who broke her heart for the sake of duty and the man who is offering her a second chance at connection without condition. Michael, meanwhile, is caught in his own emotional tug-of-war. He respects Jason. He has followed his lead for years. But he is also beginning to realize that his own happiness may lie in a direction that forces him to break away from that loyalty. His growing feelings for Britt aren't about rivalry, they are about resonance. They are two people trying to rebuild something after devastation. And they are finding that rebuilding together may be easier than doing it alone. This emotional triangle is creating ripple effects that go far beyond the three involved. Carly, Willow, Liesel, and even Sunny begin to sense the unrest growing beneath the surface. Tensions flare in unexpected places. Secrets begin to surface. And through it all, Jason begins to lose the tight control he has always maintained. His decisions grow clouded. His alliances begin to fracture. He is no longer the man who moves 3 steps ahead of the chaos, he is becoming part of the chaos. And for a man like Jason, that is a dangerous evolution. As this story unfolds, the triangle between Jason, Britt, and Michael becomes more than just a love story, it becomes a battle for identity, purpose, and emotional survival. Jason must decide whether he is willing to fight for Britt not as a protector, but as a partner. Britt must choose whether to trust the man who hurt her or embrace the one who is trying to love her as she is. And Michael must confront the cost of his own healing, whether it means stepping into a relationship that could redefine everything he knows about family, loyalty, and love. In Port Charles, nothing stays hidden forever. And when this triangle finally erupts, it will not be quiet. It will shift alliances, expose truths, and force everyone involved to confront the consequences of love delayed, love discovered, and love that refuses to die. Britt is rapidly emerging as a uniquely pivotal figure in the emotional and strategic power games unfolding in Port Charles. And her presence is no longer just a return, it's a disruption that is triggering deep reactions from those who once underestimated her value. Jason, long known for his controlled demeanor and calculated actions, is beginning to show signs of intensity that go beyond duty and into the realm of something far more personal and emotionally driven. His connection to Britt, once severed by obligation and sacrifice, is now reigniting with an urgency that he cannot ignore. Every move she makes pulls Jason further into a state of emotional activation, and it's not just about affection anymore, it's about reclaiming what he believes he lost, and protecting what he now realizes he still wants. Britt is no longer just someone he failed to save, she's someone he's unwilling to lose again. But while Jason is being pulled deeper into his emotional turmoil, Michael is preparing for an entirely different kind of battle, a collision course with Drew that is being set in motion not just by personal history but by the growing divide between them. Drew, once seen as a stabilizing figure and fatherly protector, is now being unmasked by those closest to him, and Michael is starting to see the cracks. The secrets surrounding Drew's manipulations, his surveillance, his involvement in ketamine operations, and his underhanded efforts to control Willow and Portia, are slowly coming into the light. And at the center of those shadows stands Britt, holding on to pieces of truth that no one else has yet uncovered. What makes Britt's role so volatile and dangerous is that she doesn't even fully realize how much power she holds. The fragmented memories she's recovering, the files she was exposed to, the subtle threats she overheard while moving through Dalton's lab and Brennan's network, these aren't just random details, they are keys to unraveling the lies Drew has built his empire on. And Michael, always a quick study in survival and legacy, has begun to understand that his best chance of confronting Drew doesn't come from a frontal assault. It comes from aligning with someone like Britt, someone whose silence has been weaponized, but who now has the potential to speak truth that could detonate everything. Michael sees Britt as more than an emotional refuge now. He sees her as a strategic ally, one who can offer insight, evidence, and leverage. But the more time they spend together, the more complicated things become. What began as a tactical alliance is evolving into an emotional bond, one built on shared trauma, mutual betrayal, and the kind of reluctant vulnerability that neither of them expected. And this quiet, growing connection between them isn't just challenging Jason emotionally, it's positioning Michael as a dangerous contender in a battle for more than just Britt's heart. He is stepping into a larger war for truth, control, and moral dominance in a world where everyone's motivations are shifting. Britt's silence has always been her defense mechanism. But now it's her power. What she knows, about Brennan, about Dalton's experiments, about Drew's secret affiliations, could destroy reputations and realign power structures across the city. Jason senses this. That's why his pursuit of Britt is no longer just about love. It's about containment. About keeping her safe not only from outside threats but from the consequences of revealing too much. Jason wants to protect her. But he also wants to guard the fragile ecosystem of truth she represents, because once those truths escape, no one, including himself, will be spared. Meanwhile, Drew is beginning to sense that his grip is slipping. The whispers are growing louder. Portia is pulling away. Willow is doubting him. Michael is no longer deferring to him. And Britt is becoming unpredictable. If she aligns with Michael, if she confirms the worst of what Drew has done, it will not only destroy Drew's current image, it will reveal his obsession with control, his manipulation of people's pain, and his willingness to exploit those he once pretended to protect. This escalating web of emotional intensity, secrets, and fractured loyalties is setting the stage for a dramatic confrontation, one that could see Jason, Michael, and Drew locked in a personal and ideological battle with Britt standing at the center. Not as a victim. Not as a pawn. But as a woman whose story has finally become impossible to ignore. And whose choices may very well determine the next era of chaos in Port Charles. Every step she takes now is laced with consequence. Every word she chooses to say, or not say, holds the power to ignite revelations that will shake the foundation of every relationship and every alliance still standing. And through it all, the haunting truth remains, the obsession with Britt, whether it comes from Jason's guilt or Drew's paranoia, is no longer just emotional, it's existential. Because in a town ruled by secrets, the one who knows too much is always the most dangerous. Britt and Michael growing closer in the aftermath of Drew's destruction marks a seismic shift in the emotional landscape of Port Charles, triggering a chain reaction of psychological fallout and emotional reckoning that few could have anticipated. In the vacuum left by Drew's fall, whether through public disgrace, exposure, or literal demise, Britt finds herself unmoored once again, but not broken. She has lived through betrayal, abandonment, and the crushing weight of other people's agendas. And somehow she still survives. What changes now is that Michael steps into that void not as a placeholder, but as a genuine presence. Their bond begins not from attraction but from shared disillusionment, from being used and manipulated by people they once trusted. Michael, shaken by the monstrous scope of Drew's control and the emotional toll of Willow's distrust, finds in Britt something he didn't expect, honesty without judgment, companionship without pretense, and resilience born not from strategy, but from survival. Britt, who once believed her heart belonged only to the past, begins to see in Michael a man who understands her present. Their connection unfolds slowly at first, a conversation in the hospital corridor, a silent exchange at Wiley's school. A late-night drink laced with exhaustion and unspoken truths, but beneath it is a growing current of emotional gravity neither of them can resist. They don't try to label it, don't try to control it. They simply allow it. And that simplicity becomes the most dangerous part, because it makes everything that came before it, every complicated entanglement, every sacrifice, seem distant and unnecessary by comparison. But while Britt and Michael begin to build something raw and real, Jason watches from a distance. And what he sees is nothing short of devastation. The woman he once walked away from out of loyalty to Carly, the woman he risked everything to protect from Brennan's reach, is now slowly slipping beyond his grasp, not because of betrayal, but because of timing. And that is what haunts Jason more than anything else, the knowledge that he might have come back too late. That his silence cost him the one person who saw him not as a weapon, not as a protector, but as a man. Jason's world, once so tightly controlled, begins to fracture under the weight of emotional regret. His stoicism, once a strength, now isolates him. His loyalty, once his shield, now cages him. And the one truth he can't escape is that Britt, who once waited for him to choose her, no longer has to. This budding relationship between Britt and Michael represents more than just a romantic subplot. It symbolizes a generational realignment of alliances, values, and emotional truth. Michael, long trapped between his father's shadow and his own ideals, is finally breaking free of inherited scripts and choosing his own path. And Britt, long written off as the villain's daughter or the woman left behind, is reclaiming her agency not through vengeance or manipulation, but through genuine connection. Together, they are not perfect, but they are honest. And that honesty is what begins to terrify Jason most. Because in a world built on secrets, silence, and sacrifice, honesty becomes a revolution. Jason's internal collapse won't happen in explosions, it will happen in glances, in missed opportunities. In silent scenes where the man who once could outrun death now finds himself unable to outrun heartbreak. His obsession with protecting Britt, his determination to fix what he broke, begins to morph into something darker, a need for redemption, a desperation to be needed again. And in that desperation, Jason starts making choices not rooted in strategy but in fear that he has lost his chance, that Michael has replaced him, that everything he built his identity around is crumbling. Port Charles, always a pressure cooker of secrets and shifting alliances, begins to feel the impact of this emotional triangle. Carly senses the shift and grows increasingly wary of Britt's influence. Willow, recovering from her own entanglements, watches Michael with quiet uncertainty. Liesel, ever protective, begins to wonder if this new connection will finally give her niece the peace she deserves, or simply entangle her in another storm. And through it all, the shadow of Drew's legacy lingers. Not just in memory but in the choices everyone must now make in the aftermath of his fall. In the end, the closeness between Britt and Michael may not be about erasing the past, it may be about surviving it. But for Jason, watching that unfold without being able to stop it becomes the deepest scar of all. Because the truth he never admitted until now is the one that hurts most, he didn't just lose Britt. He lost the version of himself that existed only in her eyes. And once that version is gone, there may be no way to bring him back.